to the boxing event of the year. Forget Earl Spence versus Bud Crawford. We're
To
talking
go from
Nate Diaz now versus Jake Paul.
that was last
What?
weekend, right?
Yeah, Earl Spence got his
To go
ass kicked,
from
by
to
the way.
go from the most anticipated boxing fight in like 5 or 6 years to this the next weekend is so funny.
Yeah, I know, it's
That's
crazy.
hilarious, man.
Shout out Earl Spence, by the way. Sold him some speakers. Super nice guy.
Blunderbuss
So
says, "Was Chachi choose the bonus for the UFC?" Seems like it, huh?
man. All right. Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. You watched the entire thing? Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
got my
did.
represent shirt on.
Shout out Baldur's Gate 3. I don't know if anybody's into that, but I was hoping Rich was going to be here so I could talk to him about it. But Baldur's Gate 3 came out. I played that for 12 hours yesterday, so that was fun. So yeah, I was watching it while I was playing that.
Ooh, okay. I don't know what that is, but so
It's awesome.
look, a lot of Nate Diaz fans were worried. He's 38 years old, going up against Jake Paul, who's
And
26,
let's be real,
and
it's 38 with a lot of miles on that.
a
It's
lot of
not just like
miles, a lot of wars. And we know Nate Diaz's style. We talked about it earlier, where he likes to absorb shots. He starts slow every single time, and then as the fight goes on, he starts to ramp it up a bit.
Yep.
So I just wasn't sure if he was going to be able to eat some of those shots from Jake Paul early.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, yeah, going into it, it was like, okay, Jake is what, 26?
26?
26 years old, on a ton of testosterone, clearly, right? I don't think the drug testing is very stringent for his own events, and he's jacked. So it's like, okay, this guy's 26 years old. He's on steroids. He hits like a truck. And he's fighting 38-year-old Nate Diaz, who is much slower now, who is a 155er, truly, and has struggled against every 170 pounder that he's ever faced, being just manhandled by him. Roy McDonald, like anytime he went up to 170 and fought an actual welterweight, just completely dominated.
Yeah.
So here he is fighting at 185 against a 26-year-old on steroids. And I was like, man, I just hate this setup. It sucks. I don't want to see my boy. I've been a Nate Diaz ride or die for fucking since
Forever.
like 2007, 2006 maybe. When was Tough 5?
Oh,
2007, something like that. Whenever that was. And so I was like, I just don't want to see my boy get knocked out by a YouTuber. Like, it just sucks. And like, it doesn't mean anything. If you like, it just doesn't mean anything. So like, outside of the money, what does it matter? But then,
2007.
yeah, 2007. Wow. What am I, Rain Man or something? But you know what? He actually did pretty damn well.
Yeah,
He
in
lost,
the first rounds,
obviously. Like, he lost
the
clearly.
first rounds were worrisome
I
because
gave him
he
the
did
second
hit
round.
some big shots. He ate big left right off the temple, which like I heard him in that first round.
Mhm.
And my wife's watching because she's also a Nate Diaz fan, and
Yeah.
she's like, "Oh no, like this might be over early." And I was like, "Well, this is Nate. Like even when you see like when Jake would stop throwing those big haymakers, Nate would just come up and with his hands down and
Walk
just
forward.
put it back up. Yeah, walk forward. And I was like, he's fine. Like this is just
Yeah.
Nate Diaz.
Mhm.
Second round, yeah, starts coming alive a little bit more with the little pitter patter that pop, 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 just
Yeah.
kind of
I scored that
a
round for
couple
Nate.
small shots. Yeah. But outside of that, man, you definitely see the difference in speed between
Speed,
Jake Paul and Nate Diaz.
timing,
And look,
footwork.
I know people are saying like, hey, he lost to YouTuber, didn't want to see him get knocked out by YouTuber. Let's be real here, though.
Anybody
Jake
who
Paul's
says
been
that
putting in
doesn't
the
know.
work. He's been boxing for the last 3 years, which when you think about what he's done in 3 years, that's pretty damn impressive, man.
Is it just 3 now? I feel like it's been longer. I guess, yeah, probably, huh? But I
He
mean, he
said 3
knocked out
years for his
Tyron
fight.
Woodley. He knocked out Tyron Woodley, who was an actual welterweight, who also was undersized against Jake Paul because Jake Paul fought him at like 185, I think, again. But it's like the fact that he knocked out Woodley and Askren, who are both welterweights, and he didn't knock out Nate. That alone is that's a win in my book. Nate
That's
was
pretty
barely
impressive.
bleeding. I thought he was going to be bleeding like crazy because of all the scar
So
tissue.
did I.
He came alive. He came alive at the end, but you could tell also like it didn't seem like he really cared at all. Like he was just
The
like,
thing with
I'm just
Nate,
here.
and
I'm getting
this is what I've
paid.
noticed from his last few fights, is Nate takes on and cares about moral victories more than he
Yeah.
does about the actual W or the
And he's
L that
very good
goes
at
on
getting
his
them.
record.
He'll find
Oh,
one thing to pull. And you know what he pulled from this
absolutely.
one? A guillotine.
The
A
guillotine
guillotine
choke.
late in the fight. Fucking
And
awesome,
but
dude.
it's not just that the single leg that he went
Yeah, the
after
single
in the
leg in like the
beginning of the
third.
fight, and he kind of like sits up and smiles and laughs, and you
Yeah.
hear the crowd start cheering.
Yeah.
This one right here, right?
What a great
They're
pick.
going
Shout
through an
out Esther Lynn.
exchange.
I wish Esther Lynn still covered UFC, man. She has all of the iconic MMA photos up until like 2018 or something like that. It's all her. She is just an
Yeah,
incredible combat sports photographer. I was glad
awesome,
she was
man. Such
there.
a good shot.
So good.
And then,
Yeah.
in the exchange, Paul goes to hold Nate Diaz, and so Nate sinks in the guillotine, and you see him reach his right glove
Yeah.
down and like just hooks as much as he can and starts choking the shit out of Jake Paul. And he looks at the crowd, ref separates him, and once again points at him, looks over the crowd,
Yeah.
flexes, starts laughing, and the crowd goes absolutely nuts. And then who's the other boxing announcer that they had on last night, along with
They
Hardy?
had
I can't
Todd
remember his name.
Grisham. They had Todd Grisham,
And
Hardy, and then I forgot the other guy. He
yeah,
like
that's the guy I'm
Nate
talking about right now.
completely won him over by the end of the fight.
Yes, and that's what I'm saying. So, like at this point, I believe it's the ninth round, if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken. And in the beginning of the fight, it's that announcer that's like, well, Jake's been doing this, Jake's been doing that. Nate Diaz with his hands down. You can tell that
Yeah.
Jake's been in boxing, Nate's been in MMA, and he's essentially on the guy.
Yeah.
But I want to say
He's
about
not turning over on his punches.
six or seven round, he was like, Nate's very entertaining.
Yeah.
Like you could see why he's a
Yeah.
fan favorite. You could see
Well,
why it is that people love watching him.
what he got dropped in the 5th?
Yeah.
Was that the knockdown? And then he won the next round. And
Yep.
then I thought he won the round after that, and I was like, "Oh my god. This dude might
What's
if
going on here?
if he just continues this, he'll lose, but only because of the knockdown 10-8 round." That would have been insane if he just clean swept those later rounds. He didn't. Jake ended up getting kind of a second wind and at the end there. And he won the
Yeah.
last two, I think. But yeah, it doesn't even matter. But it was better than I thought. I just didn't want to see my boy get dropped or knocked out. Even the knockdown, it seemed like he was fine. It was more like off
Look,
balance, it seemed like.
we have to take this for what it is. And this is
Exactly.
purely entertainment, dude. It's
Well,
purely entertainment.
it's not even just that. I just want to see Nate get paid.
Me too.
I just want to see him
Me
get paid.
too.
And I'm
And
sure he made at
look,
least 7 figures in this.
100%. 100%. And then after the
500K just to
fight,
show? Come on.
after the fight, they talk about the fact that, Jake's like, hey, well, I've already offered him a match in the PFL.
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
Offering him a $10 million payout. And they asked Nate, and he's like, well, he's got one on me. I got to try to get it back. And he's like, already sunk in the guillotine choke on him.
Yeah, he also was like, I already got the single leg in the guillotine, so I already beat him.
Yeah.
But I don't think that fight actually happens. Look, they can't. The PFL, they don't have endless money here. They can't. If Nate's making $10 million to fight Jake Paul, what's Jake Paul making? And how is PFL going to make any money off that fight? They're not going to make any money on it.
But
There's
isn't
no
Jake
way.
Paul a partner now with the PFL?
Yeah, but he can say that he wants to do that. It doesn't mean it makes him look. It's the same thing like when he called out Canelo. He called out all these guys. Like he knows what he's doing. He makes these claims, so people are like, well, he's game. He's willing to do it, and then it doesn't happen, and he ends up fighting Ben Askren. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's just I don't think that fight happens. I don't think it happens. I think
But also
Nate
Canelo
comes back to
doesn't
the
need the
UFC.
money. And also
Well, no,
Canelo
I know,
has a legacy. So
but
who's to say he doesn't really want to fight?
Well, yeah, but then there's other time. That was just one example. If you go back and look at all the call outs that Jake Paul has done and all the responses to call outs, anytime an actual worthy opponent calls him out, he's down to do it, and then he fights a retired MMA fighter.
Yeah.
He's very good at optics. He knows what he's doing. Like, he makes that claim. people are like, oh, I hope they do it. There's intrigue. Then he's going to fight somebody else. Nate's probably, if
He's a
Nate
businessman.
most likely, yeah, I think what's going to happen is Nate's going to come back to the UFC and he's going to fight Conor at UFC 300. I think that's what happens. Because he's
Oh, that
already
would be
talked about how
insane.
he's like, yeah, I want to do the boxing fight and then go back to the UFC. Dana's talked about him coming back already, like multiple times. Like Conor wants to do that third fight. I just think there's no way he fights at the PFL for $10 million. They're not going to pay him $10 million. There's no way.
I hope it happens, though.
I
I
hope so
really do.
too, because
Because
I
for
want to
him to
see
get
him.
a $10 million payout and ride
Yeah,
off into the
amazing.
sunset, and you could just look at Dana, flip him the bird, and
Yeah.
just,
Well, what I would like is if that does
ride
happen,
into
we
Stockton.
got time. We got time. We do that PFL fight, 10 mil, and then come back fight Conor for at UFC 300. Because
Hell yeah.
Conor's wasted now. He's washed out. Nate's washed out. Let's do it. UFC 300. It's a fun fight. You know?
One of them's coked out, though.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I'm not talking about Nate.
Yeah.
But overall, fun event. I think
Yeah.
HOB Comer said he also seen the female fight before, which was
Hardy,
Serrano
right?
versus Hardy. Yeah,
Awful fight.
a little mismatch.
Well,
Little
dude,
mismatch.
when you say it was a great event, let's limit that to the one fight because everything else was a shit show.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bad.
Uh,
And even the comment,
Chris Avila misses weight and looks your boy looked chunky in there,
he looked like Chris Avila in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
No disrespect.
Or no disrespect, but if Chris Avila sees you in the streets, it's on site.
It's on site, and you
It's
have
on
a
site.
decent chance.
All right, man. Let's move on to the next event that we're going to cover.